shadow sovereign materialized from the living darkness, her form more like an entity than a beast, a figure that seemed to drape the light around her. Her wings stretched wide, their massive span blotting out the sky. Each beat sending unnatural ripples. The shadows beneath her crawled and shifted as though the ground feared her touch. Her obsidian scales shimmered with a fluid, spectral glow, absorbing the light rather than casting it back. They cast eerie shadows that twisted and writhed as if alive, making the air around her darker and heavier. She did not simply fly. She moved like the darkness itself, her presence a gravity that pulled everything toward oblivion. Her silver eyes, streaked with violet, burned like twin stars, caught in a cold, calculating, infinite, dying universe. Then she smiled, not a grin of arrogance, nor amusement, but one of certainty. It begins. Nocturna's roar shattered the moment. The sound was not a mere cry. It was a force, an ancient, suffocating wave of dread that swallowed the sky. Guylan staggered, his breath catching as icy fear coiled around his spine. The dragons flinched, their wings twitching, eyes wide with primal terror. Even the air seemed to shudder beneath the weight of the sound, a pressure that pressed into their bones and threatened to crush resolve before the battle had even begun. It resonated through the air, slamming into crystal spires and sending visible tremors through the earth beneath. The light dimmed further, as though recoiling from the force of her presence. And then the battle erupted. Aurelia launched herself into the storm, her wings unfurling, with a brilliance that split the darkness like a blade of light. For a fleeting moment, doubt clawed at the edges of her mind. Was she strong enough to face this? The weight of expectation pressed against her like invisible force, reminding her of every battle and every hardship that had led her to this moment. She had overcome it before, but this felt different, darker, and more final. The shadows whispered her failure before she struck, but she forced them away. She could not, would not, yield to fear. With a swift motion, she unleashed her first strike. A barrage of razor-sharp crystal shards erupted from her wings, each catching what small light remained, turning into a cascade of falling stars as they surged toward Nocturna. The aura of dread unfurled from her like an unseen mist, a natural force that instilled fear, making even the most courageous hesitate in her presence. Its cold fingers slithered into the minds of her enemies. Some dragons shuddered violently, their eyes flickering with a primal fear as memories of past battles surfaced unbidden. Others fought against it, their claws tightening, jaws clenching as they struggled to resist the oppressive weight of despair. A few, unable to withstand the suffocating terror, let out piercing cries and veered off course, their wings trembling as they tried to escape the invisible grasp of dread. Dragons recoiled mid-flight, their wings faltering as panic clawed at their instincts. Some uttered involuntary cries, their resolve momentarily cracking, while others shuddered, eyes wide, with an unshakable sense of doom. Even the seasoned warriors felt a primal fear sinking deep into their bones, whispering that resistance was futile. It was not a spell, it was a presence, a raw force of terror that dug into the bones and instincts, whispering of inedible doom. And for a heartbeat, just a heartbeat, even the bravest faltered. The first clash came at a collision of raw power, a thunderous impact that sent shockwaves rippling through the battlefield. The air vibrated with the force, a deafening crack that momentarily drowned out the howling wind and the clash of wings. Sparks of energy erupted when the attacks met, scattering like stars falling against the darkened sky. The pressure of the impact sent ripples through the ground below, fracturing stone and sending shards flying like deadly shrapnel. The moment hung suspended, pure, unfiltered destruction before the battle resumed in full fury. Aurelia's crystal shards expanded, growing mid-flight into jagged, cage-like formations, each shifting unpredictably, forcing Nocturna to weave through the deadly labyrinth. But the Shadow Sovereign did not flinch. She twisted through the crystal storm, her movements almost serpentine, her wings snapping inward as she spiraled through the narrowest gaps. Then with a growl of ancient fury, she exhaled. A storm of obsidian shards erupted from her maw, her breath weapon racing through the battlefield like a hurricane of razors. The ground beneath splintered into the impact, deep fissures tearing through the earth as the force sent defenders tumbling, their roars of pain lost amid the chaos. Some dragons, caught mid-flight, recoiled as the shards tore through their wings, leaving trails of darkness in their wake. Aurelia's crystalline barrier flared, absorbing the attack, but the ground below was not so lucky. The heavens became a battlefield of fire and shadow. The air crackled with raw energy, thick with the acid scent of smoke and the metallic tang of blood. The deafening roars of dragons clashed with the chaotic vibe of steel striking scale, magic crackling like thunder. The sky trembled under the weight of battle, each collision sending shockwaves through the storm-laden winds, buffeting wings and rattling bones. Dragons clashed midair, their roars of fury lost amid the storm of magic and steel. Fire rained from above, streaking across the darkness like falling stars, while shadowy tendrils twisted through the chaos, seeking to ensnare their foes. Below, warriors fought with desperate intensity, their eyes reflecting the flames of war, their bodies moving in a relentless dance between survival and elimination. And Aurelia seized the moment. She tucked her wings and dove like a falling star, talons gleaming with raw energy. In one fluid strike, she raked beneath Nocturna's exposed belly. Contact! A resounding crack split the sky. The impact sent shockwaves shuddering through the battlefield. Nocturna shrieked in agony, her massive form lurching, dark blood splattering as her scales shattered like glass. The heavens trembled beneath the force of their clash, and yet the battle was far from over. Nocturna's silver eyes, streaked with violet, flared, burning with ancient rage. She wrenched through the pain as sharp and unwelcome, but it only fueled her wrath. There was no pain. She had endured worse, and she would tolerate this. What mattered now was retribution. Pain coursed through her body, a sensation she had not felt in centuries. Her breath came in sharp, controlled bursts as she steadied herself, refusing to yield. The wound throbbed, but the fury drowned out the pain. She was wounded, but not broken. Not yet. With a snarl, the shadow surged around her, the darkness thickening, twisting, rising, growing stronger. The actual test had only just begun, but Eternal was not so easily undone. The fractures in her obsidian scales seethed with a twisting shadow, the darkness coiling like a living thing, knitting itself back together. even as the wounds throbbed with pain. Aurelia's strike had landed, but it was not enough. Then, in the space of a single breath, Nocturna vanished. The air shuddered in her wake as if recoiling from the unnatural void left behind. A cold pulse rippled outward, distorting the very fabric of the sky. Silence rushed in like a deafening voice, as if existence had hesitated in her form's absence. It was not a retreat. No hesitation. She ceased to exist, slipping beyond sight like a whisper swallowed by the void. The air around Aurelia grew cold, the essence of the sky, shuddering with unnatural energy, a flicker, a ripple in the darkness. And then she was behind her. Aurelia barely had time to react before obsidian talons tore through the air, raking across her side. Pain exploded through her body. The impact drove her off balance, her wings jerking violently under the sudden force. Her breath hitched, sharp and uneven, as a wave of dizziness threatened to pull her under. Vision blurred at the edges, the pain clawing at her focus like a relentless predator, demanding attention she could not afford to give. The wind tore past her, a sharp, whistling agony against her wounded side. The shock rippled through her body, muscles tensing in protest as pain flared along the torn membranes of her wings. Deep, jagged gashes carved into the thin protective scales, nearing its base, sending streams of shimmering crimson spilling through the sky like shattered rubies. Nocturna's silver eyes streaked with violet gleams, the corner room's fang maw curling into something almost smug. She had found the weakness. She had wounded Aurelia, not just injured her, but hindered her flight. Aurelia forced herself to level out, suppressing the searing pain, but she felt stiffness and heaviness in her movement. It was subtle, but even the most minor disadvantage can mean the difference between survival and death in a fierce battle. Caelum felt the pain through their bond, a sharp, searing sensation that lanced through his chest as if the wound were resolved. It was not just an echo, but raw and innate, a connection that blurred the line between his suffering and Aurelia's. Their shared essence pulsed with agony, yet a fierce determination burned beneath it. Aurelia did not cry out. She did not need to. He knew. He gritted his teeth, his fingers tightened around the crystal bow, the magic thrumming against his palm. This had to end. His thoughts burned with a singular purpose. One final shot. One moment. One chance. The crystal ball hummed, resonating with Aurelia's magic, the gathered energy throbbing through the air like a heartbeat. Then her voice whispered in his mind, "Steady, Caelum, this is our light." He exhaled slowly, walking out the battlefield, the pain, the chaos. His vision narrowed, his focus absolute. Aurelia soared higher, higher still, breaking through the lower clouds, framing herself against the darkest stretch of sky. And then she unleashed it, a radiant beam of concentrated crystal light erupted from her core, splitting the storm, a celestial force that tore through the darkness like a divine spear. At the same time, Caelum let his arrow fly. The battlefield seemed sealed at that moment. Warriors and dragons turning toward the sky, their gazes locked on the streak of pure radiance hurtling toward its target. A hush, a heartbeat of silence as hope and dread collided in the air before the explosion of light consumed the darkness. The two forces met, mid-flight, merging into a firing lance of pure radiance, its glow brighter than the dying sun. The battlefield below was bathed in light, and for a moment everything paused. Warriors lifted their gaze, awestruck, as the brilliance washed over them, banishing the suffocating dark. The golden radiance cascaded over the battlefield like a cleansing tide, illuminating every crack and shadow with its searing glow. The once oppressive air lightened as if the weight of fear had been stripped away, leaving behind a charged silence filled with wonder and renewed determination. Some fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the sight of hope carved into the heavens, while others let out fierce cries, their spirits reunited with the promise of victory. Fear, despair, everything Nocturna had instilled was momentarily forgotten in the wake of the radiant force above. The spiraling energy sphere slammed into Nocturna's chest, driving her backward with a force unlike anything she had endured before. Shadows rippled violently around her, wreathing in agony as the light seared through her form. A choked snarl escaped her, fury and disbelief mingling with the raw pain that tore through her essence. She lashed out instinctively, claws swiping at the radiance consuming her, but it was useless. The light was relentless, merciless, and for the first time, true desperation flickered in her silver eyes streaked with violet. The impact detonated on contact, sending a shockwave through the sky, its ripples cracking through the darkness like a fractured mirror. Nocturna's form flickered violently, her shadows, wreathing and conversing, twisted like living tendrils as they cracked apart under the searing radiance. They shrank and dissolved, peeling away in ragged, smoke-like wisps that curled and burned, unable to withstand the relentless purity of the light. But it was too much. The light burned through her essence like fire through parchment, unrelenting, unstoppable. She let out a furious, ear-splitting shriek, her body twisting against the onslaught. For the first time, the darkness faltered. The battlefield seemed still, warriors pausing mid-strike as they sensed the shift. The eerie, suffocating weight of Nocturna's power wavered, a crack forming in the unyielding night. She was losing for the first time, and the air trembled with the realization. Nocturnal snarled, silver eyes streaked with violence, blazing with rage and defiance. She was not broken, but the fury burned her as she was forced to retreat. The humiliation of defeat seared her mind, her rage simmering beneath the surface, promising vengeance. A final echoing cry tore through the valley as she dissolved into the void, vanishing into the shadows from which she came. With her retreat, the enemy army wavered. A ripple of confusion spread through the obsidian and black dragons. Their once coordinated assault now a fractured force without its leader. Then her command whispered through the battlefield like a dying breath, a spectral whisper that slithered into the minds of her forces. Fall back! The dark dragons broke formation, turning away, streaking toward the storm-laden horizon like fading shadows. The battle was over for now. Nocturna's retreat was a fleeting relief, but unease lingered. They knew she would return more powerful and more relentless. Would she come with new allies? A darker power? For now, they could only prepare. Their victory shallowed by the certainty that this was merely the beginning. They knew the dark dragons would return, stronger and more determined, bringing an even more significant threat. The respite was temporary, a brief moment to gather the strength before the storm came again. Her army vanquished into the storm, and a tide of darkness dissolved into the horizon like ink washing away at dawn. Yet the battlefield still whispered of a presence. Scorched earth, broken bodies, and the lingering dread in the eyes of those who had faced her. Even in retreat, she was not truly gone. Yet they could breathe a little easier. For now, knowing they had won this battle. Plans would be made, defenses strengthened, and preparations set in motion, for the war was far from over. The crystal spires lay in jagged ruins, remnants of a proud city that had once stood as a beacon of beauty and resilience. Now, the fractured forms told a story of loss, sacrifice, and the enduring scars of battle. Once a beacon of beauty and resilience, the shattered city now bore the weight of its suffering, its broken remains whispering to a fight that had left its mark on the soul of Vacari. Their once glorious forms had been reduced to fractured remnants, reflecting broken light across the devastated earth. Shattered crystals littered the ground, gleaming weakly beneath the haze of destruction. The scorched ground smoked plumes of vapor rising from where dragonfire had torn through the stone, leaving behind ashen scars and the acrid stench of burnt scales. The metallic tang of spilled blood lingered, thick in the air, mingling with the distant groans of the wounded. The sky, once a maelstrom of war, lightning, and roaring fury, was eerily silent. The war had paused, but it had not ended. The defenders stood along ruins, wings sagging, weapons lowered, their bodies trembling from exhaustion, but still standing. They had won, but at what cost? A hush fell over the battlefield as Aurelia descended. It was not the effortless, regal descent of a victorious dragon. It was heavy and painful, her wings faltering slightly as she remained steady.